In this chapter, we will cover oligopoly. And you guys recall, oligopoly is one of the market structure that is between pure competition and pure monopoly. And those two extremes are the exception, not the rule, especially in US economy. So this chapter gonna cover monopoly, and we will discuss the characteristic of monopoly, which is a blend of great monopoly and less competition as the way we define it. Okay, we will also gonna examine throughout the chapter a possible choice and output that monopoly firm had to put forward, and also advertising behavior, right, that monopoly industry follows. We're also going to address the fact that monopoly industry are not efficient market structures. Okay, at the end of the chapter, we'll talk about the competition between the giant monopolist retailers in the internet today. So in the content of the chapter, monopoly behavior will bring a game theory, look at the game theory overview. We'll see some of the monopoly models, and also answer the question why we don't have a single model to explain monopoly. Monopoly and advertising, I'll bring back here. Monopoly advertising, we'll explore the concept again. And monopoly and efficiency, as I pointed out to you, and we'll conclude the chapter with the game theory. And they're gonna illustrate a strategic behavior that monopoly firm must follow to be able to put forward the pricing and output strategy. So what is monopoly? Right? Monopoly is a firm that is a market structure that is categorized, or that have the following characteristic, I would say. So there's entry, right? The entry of a firm to monopolist industry is limited, but it's not limited as what we saw in a pure monopoly. So there's not easy entry of a firm into monopoly, but compared to oligopoly, but compared to monopoly, oligopoly is a little bit easier. So you will see that there are a fewer producers, and also we have homogeneous or standardized monopoly, as well as a differential monopoly. Okay, so monopoly have a limited control over price. If you compare it to oligopoly, have a limited control over price. If you compare it to monopoly, because monopoly have a full control over price. Oligopoly have a limited, they have a control, but the control is limited if you compare it to monopoly. Example of homogeneous monopoly, right? We can have the industry of steel, aluminum market. Those are some example of homogeneous or standardized monopoly. For differential monopoly, we can roll in the market of automobiles, also electronic equipment market, breakfast cereals. We can cite those and group them under differential monopoly. There is a mutual interdependence exists a monopoly, and the mutual interdependence is when each firm depends on its own pricing strategy and also the one of its rival. Right? We already alluded to the entry barrier in oligopoly, right, are more substantial if you compare it to a monopolistic competition, but less if you compare it to monopoly. Okay. So how you distinguish oligopoly industry on the market? We say here that you use the 4-firm concentration ratio. We also, during monopoly competition chapter, we talk about a Henfelder index, which is HI. We look at the calculation of those index. So here we stay with the 4-firm concentration ratio. So if the 4-firm concentration ratio is 40% or greater, you are in presence of oligopoly. But there are some shortcomings when you look at the ratio to identify the type of market you have in front of you. Right? So the calculation of the ratio takes in consideration the national data. So to that point, you can see industry that have only one firm in the local level, right? So, and it's typically monopoly in the local level, but the same industry, if you look at the 4-firm concentration ratio, the ratio is lower, meaning that the industry enjoy competition. So because of the calculation of the ratio, use national data. Okay. That's one of the assumptions that you need to, or shortcoming that you need to take in consideration by looking at taking the ratio. We also have the point of inter-industry competition, which is also now taken into consideration when we look at the 4-firm concentration ratio. What I mean by that, you can see, for instance, industry of glass compete with plastic, right? Because they produce some substitute good, like a plastic cup versus a glass cup, for instance. So you can see those two competing, but it's not represented into the ratio, right? The import, right? You have an import firm that compete in US market. And again, the import firm are not, the importation are not taken into consideration in the calculation of the ratio. Okay. Now, there may be a dominant firm, right, in the industry. That also is not account for, right? Not account for in the calculation of the 4-firm concentration ratio. So that being said, let's look at this table over here that display a few high concentration of a US manufacturing industry. So you can see that the 4-firm concentration, this side by side, you have the Herfindahl index and also the 4-firm concentration ratio that represent the 4 largest firms. So the 4-firm concentration ratio of 40 or more, right, here indicate that we are in presence of oligopoly. So if you, again, in this table, you have ND, stand for not disclose information. And this is published by the Bureau of Census and represent 2012 data. So oligopoly behavior. We review the concept of a game theory and collusion. So what is a game theory? Game theory is a study of how people behave in a strategic situation. And the prisoner dilemma is a classical example of mutual interdependence and game theory. And what is a prisoner dilemma, which is I explained also in the previous lecture. The prisoner dilemma is, let me give you a scenario for prisoner dilemma. So the district attorney office may have two individual that is suspected that the individual commit a crime, but they don't have a proof to go, because if you don't have a proof, you go after them and you convince them of the crime. But since you don't have a proof, but you suspect that they probably commit a crime, so they have those two individuals, and since there's no any bond between them, they put them in two different cells and offer them a deal, right? For instance, it might be, okay, if you, Mr. A, for example, you confess the crime first, and Mr. B didn't confess the crime, Mr. A will give you a deal, which is, for instance, you have 8 years in prison. But if you do not confess the crime first, you end up with 10 years or 15 years in prison in case your other partner, Mr. B, confess the crime before you. So if you put it that way, both individuals, since they don't have any collusion, they don't know each other well, so now the decision will depend on the action and the reaction of the other partner. So it makes you suspect that what if they commit a crime, because so what if I don't say it first and the other person say it, I end up take the long time in prison, in incarceration. So both will end up confessing the crime, and those both could also not confess the crime and go without any punishment. But because of the way the deal is presented to them, and also they are on that strategic behavior, because anything they will do or any outcome will depend on the action and the reaction of the other partner, they both end up committing the crime. So that is the dilemma, simple explanation of a prisoner dilemma. That is a good illustration, or a classical illustration of a game theory and interdependence. Collusion here is defined as cooperating with a rival, right, on the price and the output produced, and that can benefit the firm, right? And there's always incentive for firm to cheat on any collusion agreement, because cheating can result in increased revenue for the cheater. This graph is an illustration of a payoff, right? Payoff matrix for a two-firm oligopoly, right? So you see the box over here show the payoff of each firm, and based on a combination of a strategy they use. So in this example over here, first, the assumption is two price strategies, right? And each over here represent its backs, represent a payoff, right? They have an independent action. So if we will look at the graph, the table here, so we have the competitor at Rare Air and Uptown. So you can see that each of them have two price strategies, high price or lower price. And depending on the strategy you adopt, you will have this box over here will show your payoff metric. For instance, if a Rare Air adopt a high price strategy, and at the same time Uptown adopt the same high price strategy, both end up with a revenue of 12 million each. But if one deviated from here, you will see, for instance, if rare air adopt low price strategy while uptown keep a high price strategy, you will see that the rare air revenue increases from 12 to 15, while uptown revenue decreases. So there's the market share. The person who, or the firm who lower the price gain more market share versus the one that keep the price strategy higher. Right. Okay, so assuming no collusion, the output of the game is to sell D, right? We're both party using a low price strategy and earning 8 million as a profit, right? But one thing we need to keep in mind here, inferior profit level will eventually lead firm to higher price strategy again. There are two main reasons why we cannot use a single model to explain oligopoly, right? First, because oligopoly deal with a great range and diversity of market structure, right? The decision made by oligopoly depend on the action of its rival, right? And that make it difficult to explain the behavior without several model. And each of the model are described in the following slides. So the first one being kinky demand theory. Right? The kinky demand model is used for non-collusive oligopoly to explain their behavior and pricing strategy. And here, since the firm do not collude, none of them know for sure what the rival are doing. However, firm will assume, that the rival will match any price reduction, right? Because of if you don't match it, eventually whoever drop the price, if the price decreases, will get more market share. So they will match that in effort to maintain the customer, the market share. In the other hand, we will assume, reasonable to assume that firm that raise the price. If a firm raise the price, the rival will ignore that price increase, right? It will ignore any price increase in effort to steal consumer from the rising price firm. So if we look at it, a kinky demand curve here, so stay with A. So if you look at it, you see that the graph show the kinky demand curve. So the slope of non-collusive oligopoly demand curve. So you have the demand, you have D1 and D2, and also you have the corresponding marginal revenue, MR1, and MR2. Right, so, and these depend on whether the rival will match any price decrease, right, which is a straight line, MR1 and D1, right, or ignore the price increase here represented with the demand curve D2 and MR2, right? And if you go to the graph B, the issue is that firm will ignore any increase in price above PO, right? And any decrease in price, they're gonna match it. So that being said, you will see that the consumer have two different section of the demand curve, right? They have the section D to E, and also they have the section E and D. So we have, and that's why you see the demand curve have this kinky shape, and the price that they cannot deviate from is still this PO, and corresponding to the quantity QO. Okay. Here you see that, and also the marginal revenue curve also have two different sections, right? The one assigned to D2 and the one for the demand curve D1, which is MR1. Okay, and because any shift in marginal cost here between MC1 and MC2 cut, right? Because they have this break line over here. This is vertical break line. So the MC1 and MC2, any shift in this marginal cost cut the dash vertical line. And that also explains why the quantity sell QO are the same quantity and the price is P0. Right, so no change in either P0, the price, and the quantity QO of the output to result in any shift of the marginal curves. So competitor and rival strategize against each other, right? And that give a consumer ability to have a two partial demand curve, right? Two partial demand curve. And each part has its own marginal revenue as well. There are some criticism of this model, right? The kinky demand model, right? And the first being the model didn't explain why the price is originally set to P0. It just explained the fact that any deviation from that P0 won't be beneficial, right? Because either rival will match the price or ignore it. And the equilibrium, right? The place to be is at that P0. The second criticism of the model is the fact that the model portrays the price as rigid. But in reality, we know that the oligopoly price flex. They are not rigid as the way the model imply. And also there's a chance that changing the price could result in a price war. So oligopoly tend to collude, right? And especially when they have same cost structures, they tend to collude. And the aim of that is to be able to have a joint profit, to be able to maximize a joint profit if they collude on the quantity to produce, the quantity to produce, they agree on that quantity, they will have a better control over the price. They have a control over the price, ultimately they will be able to maximize the joint profit. So if oligopoly firm face identical and cost and similar demand condition, they may collude to limit the joint output and have a control over the price, so they can set up that single or common price. At that point, each firm will act as a pure monopoly, right? Setting output at the Q0 with a corresponding price of a P0. And this curve is a good illustration of that. So if you have the output to maximize the profit at where we have equality M or equal MC, if you project it all to the quantity axis, you have the Q0, which is the quantity to produce to maximize a profit. So if you project all to the demand curve, the market price is P0 and the cost is D0. So you can see here that the market price is greater than the cost. And the differential between the greater market price and the unit cost time and the quantity produced give you the economic profit, which is represented here by this green rectangle. And one thing to point out here is also that collusion is more likely to happen when the oligopoly produce a standardized good or service. Concept of open collusion. The cartel is a group of firm or country, right? Cartel is defined as a group of firm or country joining together and have that formal agreement as what price to charge for the product that they produce, and also output to produce by each member of the agreement. Cartels are illegal in the United States. However, United States do business with cartel country. In the past, OPEC, which is one example of cartel, right? United States do business with them, and in the past, cartel. OPEC, right, is an organization of petroleum exporting country. So organization of petroleum exporting country. And OPEC has been successfully control its price by restricting the supply of each country member in the past. But lately, because each country faces a different national priority, so lately they haven't had that full control like they used to have in the past. So here, a global perspective give you the output released by each member of the OPEC. So you can see that they account for almost 34% of our oil production, right? So here are some of the obstacles to collusion, right? For collusion to work, you have to maintain that agreement, right? And we know that there's every firm or each firm going get into industry face a different challenges, right? The cost and the demand differential can create a problem for the firm member to keep the collusion, right? Because they all have different demand and cost structure, it's difficult for members to maintain the same price, the agreed price. And also, the more firm is included in the agreement, it becomes hard to maintain the agreement. There's always a tendency for members to cheat, and cheating will erode the control over the price. Right? If a member start cheating, that will erode the cartel power over time. Right? Example of prisoner dilemma. Recession is another challenge to collusion as well, because if overall demand decline, right, during a recession, right, it make it lucrative to cheat, right, make it more attractive for firm to cheat, because you want to cheat to be able to produce more and increase your output, put more people back to work. New entrant, right, new producer will be drawn into the industry if there's economic profit. Right? By doing so, they will increase the market supply and ultimately put a down pressure on the price. And the law prohibits cartel and price collusion in United States economy. So the next model is the price leadership. And price leadership is an economy model where a dominant firm initiates price change and the rest of the firm follow the leader. And the leader will communicate price change through speeches, press releases, and article in journal. Right. And one challenge here is you won't have that frequent price change, because even though the leader will put forward initiative of price change, they are not certain that order will follow. So there's no frequent, there's infrequent price change. And also with in mind, any price change may result in, it could result in a price war. Oligopoly and advertising. In differentiate oligopoly, advertising is the best way to communicate the product difference, right? So you differentiate yourself from the market and you put money in advertising to make the market know of what differentiate your product from your competitor, from your rival, right? Product improvement also is revealed through advertising, and that can result in increasing your market share, ultimately increasing your revenue, because product innovation are more difficult to copy by a competitor than just a price change. And oligopolies are financially stable to put forward a big advertising due to economic profit of the previous year. Positive effect of advertising, right? Advertising is a low-cost way of providing information to consumer, right, about the difference or the quality of your product. And that reduces also the consumer time and doing the research or searching for a particular product. And advertising also enhances a competition between firms and help in economic efficiency. speed up technological progress by introducing new product. Advertising also can help obtain economies of scale by reducing the long-run average cost. This table here shows you how much money oligopoly can put forward for advertising, the advertising budget in 2018. You can see that it's big dollars. These are in millions of dollars. Well, advertising doesn't have only positive effect, but it have also negative side of it, right? It can be manipulative, right? It can lead to increased monopoly power, right? And economic inefficiency. This table here shows you the world 10 top brand. And this classification is based on 4 criteria. Right. So the brand market share, the world appeal across age group and nationality, customer loyalty, and the ability for the brand to stretch behind the original product. Oligopoly and efficiency. You recall from the formula of efficiency. So the productive efficiency is met when the P is equal minimum average total cost. You see here for oligopoly, the price is greater than the minimum average total cost. So here, productive efficiency is not met for oligopoly. And allocative efficiency happens when the price is equal to the marginal cost. Here, the price is greater than marginal cost. And we conclude that the allocative efficiency is also met. It's not met, also not met with oligopoly. Okay. So neither efficiency happen in the oligopoly market. And also have the foreign increase of foreign competition, right? So the foreign competition has increased rivalry in oligopoly industry. If the oligopoly leader price practices price limiting price, they may get a lower price. Right? Oligopoly could foster rapid product development because of the competition in the industry, and with a firm profit that they have a financial means to invest in new technology, right? Because they have a money for it. Yeah. So here is an illustration of how oligopoly will make that pricing and output decision, taking in consideration how the rival will act. So it's similar to the game. So we're gonna go through the game and look at the strategy that the player use playing the game. That's the same thing. Because before you make a move, you have to anticipate how your rival will react to your move, right? So here, we'll begin by looking at the one-time game, right? And one-time game mean that firm make the decision in a single time period. And simultaneous game mean that firm make the decision simultaneously. A positive sum game stand for the fact that the sum of the two firm output is positive. So it's the same as a win-win situation. We all have a positive result. The zero-sum game is a game in which the sum of the two firm output is zero, one win and one lose. So win, you lose a situation. If you add it together, it's equal to zero. A negative sum game mean the sum of the output is a result that is less than zero. And a dominant strategy is an output that is better than any alternative option, regardless of what the other firm will do. Okay, so the rest of the slide will cover the game in detail. So I encourage you to read it. The explanation is the back of your book. So I encourage you to go and take time to read it. Nash equilibrium is an output, right, from which neither firm want to deviate from. That's the equilibrium. So anything out of the Nash equilibrium is not a good position for the firm. So, and the Nash equilibrium is described as where rivals see their respective current strategy as the optimal choice, right, given the other firm strategy. And the Nash equilibrium is the only output that is considered as a stable and can be maintained, and that it can persist. And if that being said, if the output is not at the Nash equilibrium, then firm will continue to modify their strategy until they reach the Nash equilibrium. Okay. So here is this example illustrate a one-time game, right? And this happened in a single period. And a positive sum game. So again, the example here is between two firms, CHP14 and Dramco. Right. And CHP14 international pricing strategy is his dominant strategy. Right. Alternatively, so since the CHP14 have international pricing as its dominant strategy, and Dramco also have international pricing as its a dominant strategy, the area, right, the equilibrium will be at this cell 8. Anything outside of this cell A cannot, they're gonna keep strategizing until they get to this Nash equilibrium, which is where they're supposed to be. So you see cell A here represent the Nash equilibrium because neither Dramco nor CHP14 will independently want to move away from this position, right? Given the other firm's strategy. The concept of credible and empty threat. Right, credible threat here is a threat that is believable by the other firm. Right, so in actual economy, it's difficult to establish the credible threat, right? And credible threat being a statement of coercion that is billable by the other firm. But the question remains from the other firm will say why the threat is still be, if you move from that position, I would drop my price in the whether you'll be out of business. So the other firm will say, why you didn't just go and get me out of business? Why you have to make me threat now? So there's still a question, even if it's billable, there's still a question that challenges that threat. And if the threat is credible, then the firm will move away from the Nash equilibrium, will abandon that Nash equilibrium. And a credible threat also can lead to a collusion, right? A strong control over the price by the industry as a whole. An empty threat is a statement of coercion that is not believable by the other firm, and they will ignore it. Firm will remain at that original Nash equilibrium. And that's the end of this chapter. And the last word of the chapter is internet oligopolies, right? So you'll see that Google grew to be a near monopoly, right, in search engine. Facebook advanced to be also near monopoly in social media. Amazon is close to, or is a near monopoly in online retail. Microsoft in operating system, PC operating system, Microsoft moved to be a near monopoly. You have Apple has a dominance in its device and all the devices, his device and that run on Apple operating system, right? These are very successful technology companies that are now competing outside of their respective sector with each other. And what they do that is in the quest to increase revenue and satisfy investors. They compete for revenue collected from advertising, and also they compete by designing new consumer electronic product, right? And to this point, you will see that they put a lot business of firm out of business. The creative disruption that we alluded to in the previous chapter. Right.